Welcome back to Call to Purpose. I'm here with Toni again. We're excited for our third podcast. Today we're going to talk about The Bright Side of Broken, which is Toni's book. So tell me, why did you decide to write a book? Or how did this transpire?
The book is a long time coming.
Okay.
I had a conversation with my very first pastor when I became a Christian,
Okay.
which wasn't too long ago. And I had been praying for my now late husband at the time.
Right.
And I was telling my pastor about it, and he's like, "You need to write a book." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to write a book." As time went on, I started having experiences that were not super pleasant experiences.
Right.
And I kept getting this prompting, like, "You're going to write a book, you're going to write a book."
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I kept thinking, like, "Oh, that's a long way off," or
Right.
"Am I really," like, it wasn't my desire.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was like I don't know if
A
I'd
calling?
say calling, but
Yeah.
it was more out of obedience.
Okay.
Like, this is something that
Right.
is going to help a lot of people.
And make a difference. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one large experience, I was in Boston running the Boston Marathon when in 2013 there were bombs planted, and that was a big deal.
Right.
So I was at the Boston Marathon bombings, very close to the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And after that experience, my friend who I was with, Jennifer McAllister, she wrote a book a couple of years later, and I felt like, I still felt that stirring, like, I need to write a book.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And it was almost like this pressure, like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to write a book. And I was like, okay, but
How?
I still don't have the desire. But God was like,
Right.
not right now. Just
Right.
because Jennifer is writing a book, it's not your time yet. You still have some things that you need to experience.
Right.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because there were
Yeah.
a lot of more challenging, difficult things that I had to go through before
Right.
writing this book.
Right.
So,
And in order to make this book happen, I know, let's hear about how you found a book coach, right?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of an interesting story. Total God thing, but I have become a massage therapist, and I have a practice
Right.
in the Fort Worth area.
And we'll talk about olive grove therapy in the
Another
upcoming
podcast.
podcast.
But I was one of my former clients from when I was a personal trainer had come to me and said, "I'm training for a marathon," and she's not a runner. But
Right.
She was like, "The Lord has called me to run a marathon." She didn't want to do it, but she's like, "God told me that I need to come see you."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay,
It's powerful.
I can help you get prepared for your marathon and, work on your muscles." And so she came in, and she was like, "So what's new?" Like, we hadn't spoken really or connected in a few years.
Right.
And I said, that I told, she's like, "So what's new with you?" And, I was like, "Well, I'm doing massage therapy." And I said, "Actually, I've been, I know that God's been calling me to write a book."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "I just, I know that's something that I'm supposed to do, and
Right.
I need to start getting on it."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Huh?" I'm like, "What?" She's like, "I just started a publishing company." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
Yeah, but you've got to be kidding. So it was
Meant
like
to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was there to help her, but she was there to help me. And
Right.
she is a book coach, and she helped me get to, it's called a hybrid publisher. So she coached me through the writing process and got me connected to, she worked, like, she was like the liaison, like, I went through her to
Right.
get it edited, get the the cover, the title. I mean, everything was, she coached me through all that.
Right.
And then she ultimately helped me get it published onto self-publishing through Amazon.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah,
That's great.
that was a huge.
So another example of a coach. If you want to write a book, there are book coaches
There are
out
book
there.
coaches out there.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, and
That's
Call to
right.
Purpose can help connect people to book coaches
That's right.
along with the life coaching. So,
That's right.
do you want to tell us about one of the stories in your book? I've read this book and I highly recommend it. Obviously, it's a lot of great stories. I love how you have it structured. There's scripture, there's questions to make you think about your own life and kind of reflect and it's just a great tool, I think, for people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the structure, the way those chapters go, each chapter is something that was a challenge, something either that happened that was out of my control, or it was something that I chose that wasn't the best decision for me.
Right.
There's a lot of different stories in there that I share, and I've allowed myself to become vulnerable to help other people. Again, that's why I wrote the book in the first place, is to help other people.
Right.
So each story is something bad, but then I've found that as and this is my goal and my passion, is to help people. Okay, yes, we all have bad experiences. We all go through difficult things.
Right.
But if you hadn't had this experience, what good has come out of that?
Right.
And some people don't see that. All
Right.
they see is either the victim mentality, as I've shared in other podcasts, that I, at a point in my life, I felt like I was a victim.
Right.
And that's really not a healthy way to approach.
Right.
And so to learn how to find the good in all of the bad, like, okay, well, if this bad thing didn't happen, then this other great thing wouldn't have presented itself.
Right.
And it's been a huge blessing to just, you start to see your life in a completely different way. And
Right.
I can go back, and people that have hurt me, I can go back to them, and I don't necessarily want to go back to them, but I could go back to them and say, you know what, thank you so much. I can say thank you.
Right. Grateful for the experience,
yes,
right?
for helping me learn those things that I really needed to learn.
Yeah. That's great.
And there's questions in there too. Like each chapter has some questions for the reader to prompt them to start focusing on, like, okay, so yeah, this has happened to me, and what is the good in my life? And, there's specific questions in there.
Right. And it kind of goes right along with that positive psychology that we talked about in the first podcast of how can you look at your life in a positive way, and how can you make those changes to get to where you need to be. And your book is a great example of, sometimes you have to go through the bad to get to the good.
Yes.
And, sometimes there's a path out there. But yeah, you can kind of learn from your stories. Maybe your stories will help someone accelerate their life, or make better choices. And I think the negative side, right? You were talking about fear-based decisions.
Yes.
We need to get people out of that mindset and more positive,
Yes.
forward thinking. Yeah.
And I think with being in Boston.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to us about Boston?
Well, I was going to say, or I'm reminded as we have this conversation about that I was spared. And, a lot of people will say, oh, well, why you? And why not?
Right.
There were people there that were killed. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, why weren't you killed? Like, why are you so special? It's
right.
like, well, it's not that I'm special. It just wasn't my time, and God had purpose for me.
Right.
Like, I'm sitting here talking about Boston, which, I've had some things that my life isn't finished yet. I still have all this work to do. I still had work to do.
Right.
I needed to write a book. I needed to be on this podcast. I needed to, where the people that passed away, unfortunately, but that was the end of their purpose in being on Earth.
Right.
And if you look at the world in more of a eternal perspective as opposed to just this point in time, there is so much more than right now.
Right.
And if you have that perspective, then you can
Right. And
maybe
that's
have a better perspective on why you're here.
right, right. And have faith, right? And,
Yes,
and
like,
the foundation.
You're here for a reason. Like,
Right.
You're here for a reason.
Yeah. Let's find out the reason.
Let's
right?
find out the reason. 'Cause it's good. It's a good reason. It's not a bad reason. It's a
Yeah.
very good reason.
Yeah.
So let's help
And
them find out.
in Boston, not to give away too much of your stories or the book, but you were between the bombs, right? At the Boston.
So there were 2 bombs that went off at the finish line. So I was after the second bomb.
Okay.
So the first bomb went off, and then there were people there, and then there was the second bomb went off. My friend Jennifer saw that second bomb go off in front
Oh my
of her.
gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
And that was
So
at the finish line, right?
that was at the finish line. So
Okay.
a marathon is 26.2 miles. I was at mile 26
Okay.
when that second bomb went off.
Wow.
So there's 2 immediate corners. So you turn right on Hereford, left on Boylston. Everybody who knows the Boston Marathon knows that, okay, you just have 2 more turns, and it's just very quick, right and then left.
Right.
So I was about to make the right-hand turn
Yeah.
to go to the left, and the finish line's right there.
Yeah.
So I heard the bomb go off. I didn't know it was a bomb. I had just run 26 miles, and I was extremely, I was having a bad
I'm
day
sure.
that day.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling well. Even when I woke up that morning, I woke up with a sore throat.
Right.
I was like, okay, this is off to a bad start. And my friend Jennifer and I had, for some reason, and we don't normally when we run a race, I let my friends, like, we let each other, like, if you're having a good race, go. We're not gonna have hard feelings. If you're having a good race, you go do your race. We're gonna do our race.
Right. See you at the end.
Yeah,
Right?
see you at the finish, and we're happy for you. Whatever. No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. You don't want to hold each other back.
No,
you know.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, because
That's
we've
good.
we've all trained really hard, and we all have goals, and
Right.
so go
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And so that day, of course, obviously, I wasn't feeling well, and I kept being held back. Whether it was so we missed the start. So you get started in corrals, and we were in a corral, and we had missed our corral.
Okay.
But we didn't have to worry about that because you still have a chip, and you get
Right.
to start when you start. And
Right. It starts when you cross that
yeah.
line,
And
right?
we were all anxious, like it was just like, okay, come on, and we kept being held back.
Yeah. Interesting. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then our other friend Shamin got ahead of us, and I was like to Jennifer, and I never say this, but I was like, why don't we run together?
Yeah.
That way, we can kind of enjoy it. Even though marathons are hard,
Right.
we can make the best of it by sticking together and just enjoy
Yeah.
it. Because she was kind of felt like she was being held back too at the time. So
Yeah.
we were like, let's just run together. So
Yeah.
okay. So we ran together, and at the halfway point, Jennifer had given her phone to she saw her husband on the course.
Okay.
And she gave her phone away. And so,
Wow.
yeah, which is not something she normally did either. They're like, well, if we're running together, we can just,
Yeah. You just need one phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my headphones stopped working. And so we got to mile 22, I believe, and I had to go to the bathroom. Unfortunately, this happens to me at almost every marathon where I have to go at number 2.
Right.
And so I had to stop. And so I said, Jennifer started getting ahead of me because when you have to go to the bathroom, you can't. It's hard to run. So not to give too much information, but it is
Yes.
very difficult to run. So
I've done half marathons, but never the full. So
Okay,
I
yeah.
kind of get some of that.
yeah. So
You gotta go. You gotta go.
exactly. So Jennifer, I was calling her name like Jennifer,
Yeah.
and she didn't hear me because she had one of her
Ah.
AirPods in.
Okay.
So, but I had to stop. So I was like, oh man, and I was just like, and we had also stopped to take a picture with Team Hoyt.
Okay.
If you're familiar with them, they're a father-son team who
Yeah.
the father pushes the son in the stroller.
Yeah.
And it's very sweet. So we got a picture with them.
Okay. And they're also from Texas?
They're from Boston, actually.
Boston. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
and they've
that.
both have since passed away since then.
Oh my gosh,
So,
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But
Wow.
so that was a rare opportunity that we got to have a picture with them, which was
Right.
pretty cool.
Right.
And so I stopped at the restroom, and I was really mad, and I was kind of mad at God, I'll admit. And I was like, God, why do I have to stop? Why does this happen every time
Right.
I run a marathon? And Jenny Mack had said to me, I call her Jenny Mack, a few days before that we were on the airplane, and she was telling me a story about how the God is the God of our moments and the God of our details. So after getting out of the porta potty, I was like, okay, you're the God of my moments, you're the God of my details.
Yeah.
This must be for a greater purpose.
Right.
Having no idea what was about to happen. I thought, when I'm 80 years old, maybe this will have some purpose. I don't know.
Right.
Having to go to the bathroom. I don't know. So anyway, I hear this boom.
Yeah.
And I look up in the sky, and the sky was clear. It wasn't thunder.
Right.
But I just kept going. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. You made a comment about your ear pods not working, and that's almost also divine intervention, right? Where he wanted you to be able to hear. Yeah.
And I no longer wear my ear pods or anything. I don't play music when I run anymore after that day, because I want to be aware, because you just don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's a distraction. So.
Right. So all these things happened.
So all these things happened.
Right.
And the bomb goes off, and we get stopped by a police officer and a Boston Marathon official.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, why are we stopping? I had no idea why.
Right, because you're still in that mindset. Get me to the finish.
Yep, and you stop your watch. And that's what people do. They stop their watch.
Yeah.
Just automatically. And so I'm like, well, okay, when they start the clock again, are we going to, are they going to figure out the time? Like, I'm still thinking we're going to start
You're going to finish, right?
Yeah. It was so close.
Wow.
But I had somebody stopped with me, and I won't get into that, but there's a whole story that leads to that as well, about somebody that I met on the course.
Okay.
So,
also in the book?
Also in the book.
Yeah.
But
wow.
But it wasn't my time.
Yeah.
And there was I was afraid I didn't know if Jennifer was okay. And so
wow.
Yeah. And I had heard, I still had my phone, and there was a text from Shamin, so I knew she was safe. But I didn't know about Jennifer, because she didn't have her phone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Jennifer has a book called Press On.
Okay.
It's Press On by Jennifer McAllister. You can get it off Amazon.
Nice.
So.
Well, I do want to tell you that from reading your book, the way that it's impacted me is if I start hitting all red lights or things start to happen that slow me down, I'm actually so much more aware of it now. That it's like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be going 110 miles an hour, through my day. Maybe I'm supposed to stop for a reason and pay attention to what's going on. So
I believe that's very true.
Yes.
There's always protection, and God's speaking to us all the time. It's just, are we listening?
Right. Yeah, so it's been a huge impact on my life, just to get me to slow down and take a step back. So,
glad
yeah.
to hear that.
So, well, thank you for joining us today and sharing your book. And many other great stories in there. There's how many chapters? 17?
19.
19 chapters?
19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you at the next podcast.